please, and Michael should have.
Call the meeting to order. It's 8:30. And this is the May meeting of the Committee of the Whole Administration and Finance Committee.
6:30, Mr. Mayor.
What do you think?
What did I say?
8:30. I'm hoping we're out of here by 8:30. Nice night.
Okay, I stand corrected and well done. All right, so, second item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Need a motion to approve the agenda. Councillor Barrett, seconded by
I'll second.
Mr. Oh my gosh, Robertson. Those in favor, please. Motion is carried. And now the next item on the agenda is disclosure of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof. Are there any disclosures here this evening?
None here.
No.
None is all.
Undeclared. All right, and so the minutes of the previous Administration and Finance Committee meeting held on April the 9th have been circulated with the package. Is there any business arising from those minutes? Hearing none, I'm about to go on. And the next item on the agenda is delegations and presentations. We have none here this evening. And so I'm at item number 6 on the agenda, which is the two discussion items up tonight. The first is a discussion item to see if we can come to some sort of a recommendation to the next council as to what we might do with the giant tiger assessment and taxation. The briefing note that you have in front of you indicates that MPAC now has visited our offices and reviewed the building plans for the building, and their team of assessors has gone into the building. Now at this point we don't know what the assessment will be, but I'll just ask the staff if they gave us any indication. Well, I guess we really don't need to get into amounts, and we probably don't know the amounts anyway. The question is that there is going to be some considerable addition to our tax revenues in the 2019 tax year. We may even see a bit in the 2018 tax year. The question is what to do with this. I think it's going to be a considerable windfall. And the staff has indicated, without giving us a recommendation, they've indicated that there's 7 different options that we could consider for using the expected additional tax revenue. And I'll just review them. We could use the entire amount to increase the current reserve levels. We could invest the funds in order to increase the funds for future use. Now that would mean putting them into the reserve accounts and then investing them, so 1 and 2 kind of go together. And then 3, we could increase the funding for annual capital projects to address any backlog of asset replacements we might have. We could target the funds to be used to assist in economic growth in the township. We could improve or increase current levels of service, and I don't know whether the staff had any kind of various areas of services that we might look at where we might think of increasing levels of service. We could use the amount to decrease or stabilize the township tax rate. Or, number 7, we could use some combination of any or all of the above. So I'd just like to hear some discussion around the table, just to see where people's heads are on this, and to see whether we can come to some kind of a consensus as to what we might recommend to the next council, or even to the existing council if we see some money in 2018. Any comments up there?
Well, I think we should use it to earmark it for reserve funds, and that way we can basically use the money to assist in economic growth, because if we need money from reserves, it will be there. And we can use it to increase or improve current levels of service, because the money will be in the reserve funds to draw on. And to decrease or stabilize the tax rate, because that's kind of what we use the money from reserves from. So I think that if we put it in there, it opens, we won't be having to tax the residents to increase reserve funds, because that money will be there to help with that.
The entire amount?
I don't know what the amount's gonna be, but.
No, but I'm just saying, 100%?
I mean, if it's $50 million, I would say let's review that. But if it's a couple $100,000, when we pulled that out in a year for roads, so let's put what we can into reserves and, you know, work our way through the rest. If it's an amount that will just help top things up, I think that's what we should do with it, not tax for reserves if we can avoid it.
Okay.
I have to ask a question first. Do you feel that there's an adequate amount of money in the reserves to replace the industrial land that was sold to Giant Tiger? And if not, I would suggest that maybe it go into that account, or part of it at least, give some consideration to keeping it into the, because at some point you're gonna have to acquire more industrial land.
Right, that's up for discussion here tonight too.
Okay.
Now, but to go back a step, just so that you're fully in tune, we took the full amount of, well, let me qualify that. The proceeds from the Giant Tiger land sale were used for a number of purposes. Number one, as part of our commitment to them, we had an obligation to do something with Edison Drive. So a portion of the proceeds were used for Edison Drive.
It would be Giant Tiger Boulevard in Newport, not Edison.
Well, yeah, Newport. So we used a portion for that. We used another portion for some other reason, I can't remember. It was connected with our obligation to them. Can you remember what it was?
Would be the Class EA.
Yes.
water
Oh,
study.
yes, the Class EA, what, the water.
Oh, yes.
What to do about the water. So then the residual from the proceeds of the sale went into the industrial land reserve account. And that's where it sits today. The concept being that it is there to replenish land, if we can find land.
Just to clarify, when I say reserve funds, I'm talking about operational reserves as well. So those are what we were taking the money out of, right? We have the earmarked reserves, as,
Yeah,
for lack of a better word,
yeah.
and we need
Oh, I see
to
what
make
you're
sure we
saying.
keep, get those balances up to make sure our asset management is gonna work.
Okay, I see what you're saying. So we have two types of reserves, the operational reserves and the other funds. Counselor, you haven't been in yet.
Well, it would be very helpful if, Mr. Mayor, if we could have some type of estimate. I know that staff would be loath to overpromise and underdeliver on that number in that they're not setting the amount, but it would be very informative. It would inform the conversation very much, to the Deputy Mayor's point, that if we're talking tens of, hundreds of, thousands of dollars, like where are we at with it? So that would be critical to my process. But I think that one of the biggest pain points that we see and we hear about and we literally feel are roads, because we could commit millions of dollars every year to improving the roads, and there's still roads that we won't get done that year, and we'll still have potholes every year, and we'll still have, so that is, that's a big area that could always use more money, so I think that would definitely form part of my recommendation, but I think that depending on the options that are available for industrial land use, hopefully the funds that we have there are sufficient, but again, to the Deputy Mayor's point, funding reserves, operational reserves, does take a burden off of the annual tax rate, because we fund those reserves some years through taxation. So it's kind of where most of my thinking ended after reading this, but I do think that having a more fulsome picture of what that number is going to be would be required to make a good recommendation.
And you know, we thought about when was the appropriate time to have this discussion, after we knew the amount or before we knew the amount. And we kind of thought maybe the best time to have the discussion is before we know the amount, and then deal with percentages, because when we know the amount, we'll all be looking at dollar signs, and we may get, our discussion may lead us down that path.
And if I may, Mr. Mayor, the amount, I agree that having the exact dollar numbers in front of us can, well, that would fit this project or that project. But when it comes to roads, again, lane kilometers, we can price that out, and so it's hard to think in the abstract when we can actually think about, making a real impact. And reserves are not an attractive way to spend the money on the upfront, but really it does have the, regardless of the number, it just depends on how great an impact it's gonna have on the tax rate, because we won't need to tax to fund those reserves.
So, Councillor Barrett, that would have been my second option too, if we feel that we have enough to acquire industrial land and look after the roads.
Okay, so here's the point that I want to get to. So we have, and maybe Director of Operations or the Treasurer can help us here right now. We have X numbers of dollars in the 2018 budget, that's this year's budget, for road work. And I forget what that amount is for, and I'm talking about capital road work, not so much day-to-day operational stuff. That amount that we have there has basically been funded from the existing tax revenue, has it not, or has it all been taken out of reserves? What we're doing this year with our program?
I can answer that through the chair. This year's capital is about 1.7 million. We had initially wanted, most of the capital was around Walker Street, where we were gonna get application money of almost 900,000, or just over $900,000. With that unsuccessful application, we have had to pull that money out of reserves, which we typically had not planned to do. But we support a lot of that capital with taxation money, but also federal gas tax is the other source of funding for those roads typically.
Okay, so if we looked at it from the point of view that Walker Street is kind of a one-off project, we're kind of really forced into that one. Although we haven't committed to it yet, I understand that the tenders are the tenders out, or what stage are we at with that project? Tenders out?
Tenders are out and closing this week.
Closing this week. All right, so we'll know this week whether or not that's gonna be a possible project, because we did commit a fair number of dollars from reserves, and I don't know that we have a lot of flexibility to go beyond, if the tenders come in extra high. So, my point is, if we take that and set that aside and look at the amount of money that we actually put into capital on our roads this year and taxed for it, if we left that amount intact in the 2019 year, in other words, raise exactly the same amount of money, but put some portion of these funds, 10%, 20%, 30%, 40%, 50%, towards beefing up that project in 2019, and then the remainder in the long-term reserves. Is that what you're saying? Is that what you're saying? In other words, we would increase our capital spending on roads by some percentage of that amount, keeping our tax rate the same, and the other balance, whatever percent remains, would go into the long-term reserves. Is that what I'm hearing here?
For my part, Mr. Mayor, I think that's a good starting point in the abstract.
In the abstract. Comments?
No, that sounds good.
Okay, so if you do it that way, you're not reducing the tax rate. You're not using it to reduce the tax rate. That's a clear understanding. So am I getting a clear understanding that we would not use this increased money to reduce tax rate? We would prefer to put it to capital project roads first, and then long-term capital second. Go ahead.
And so I suppose that depends on our capacity on the number of projects that we can handle in 1 year, and how big we wanna go, because if, depending on the amount of money, it might be a very different, construction season, and, if we're managing, multiple tenders and we have, multiple project managers, and how big do we really wanna go? And so we might reach capacity,
Yeah, not be able to deliver.
we might not be able to do it all in 1 year, and in which case, perhaps there is an opportunity to explore one of the other options that we have here, so.
Okay, you're bringing up a good point there, and I just want to tag on to it. One of the big issues up for discussion at county this year was that we're tendering our projects much too late. And we will be tendering county projects in October, November this year. We'll be tendering them for 2019 expenditure. And I think the way, or the concept that's slowly emerging, is that the director will be authorized to put out, let's say 50 or 60% of this year's budget in tenders that actually go out November, December timeframe, with a closing in January, but not to be, in other words, if the tender closes in January, we'll want that tender price to be good for 60 days, and we probably won't accept or reject tenders until about February. But we'll be in a position to accept tenders and award tender contracts by about February, where this year we weren't in a position to do that until March or even April. So we want to try to get ahead of the construction season next year. The other thing is, we tagged on to county tender packages, I think with one program this year, did we not? Just the one? I think it was
Area, there was crack sealing.
crack sealing, and there was line painting, another one?
Line painting and, the roadside, weed spray.
Weed spray. So we tagged on to 3 contracts. County actually had hot HL, whatever it's called, hot mix contracts. We didn't tag on to that. But there are 3 or 4 other contracts that we could have tagged on to, provided that we get the notice to county soon enough. So I think that's one good reason to have this discussion at this point, so that staff kind of gets an idea if we're going to increase, or if we're going to recommend an increase of the construction program next year, that staff gets enough lead time to be able to deliver on that commitment. So I'm sort of sensing a commitment here, a consensus, but I don't have any percentages. Maybe we don't need them. We can rest with your comment. We're sort of signaling that we want the cash to go in, some amount of cash to go into road work, and the other to go into capital reserves. So maybe that's enough direction for staff for now until we get an idea. Now, just to the treasurer, do we get any kind of a signal from MPAC as to what percentage of the 2018 year would be taxable on the distribution center?
I had no conversation with the evaluators when they were here, so I don't know that answer.
Okay, so
The
we won't,
occupancy date was March, was it, or April? A lot of times it's based on occupancy permit, so the date of the occupancy permit would be a fairly solid date, but whatever that date is would be a date they would start the assessment.
okay, so
Because we would have documentation. to
what date was the final occupancy permit issued? Do we know that?
I'm not sure it was March.
In the February 1st of March?
The 1st of March?
Yeah.
So theoretically, if occupancy date is the quote signal date, then the distribution center would attract taxation for March, April, May, June, and the rest of the year. What's that, 9
Right.
months?
Right.
10 months.
10 months.
So, but we wouldn't see that money until, that wouldn't cash flow to us until 2019, because we won't see the supplementary rolls until October, November, right?
Actually, supplementaries are coming out more frequently now. MPAC is supplying them to us more frequently.
Oh, not just twice a year?
Correct. So we may potentially see it before the end of the year.
Okay. So after the supplementary rolls came, let's suppose that we had a supplementary roll in October,
21 days is when it's due.
21 days later, we have to bill it.
We have to bill it, and it's 21 days after the sale.
So theoretically, could see some cash flow in 2018.
Yeah, it really depends on how quickly they put that assessment on.
So everybody gets the picture anyway. We can see where we're going here, or at least we can see some path ahead. Any further comments before?
I just, did I hear you right, that the counties are going to use 50% of their, this year's budget based on, to do those tenders in October, November?
I used 50 as an example,
Yeah, okay.
and that discussion has not yet taken place.
Yeah, well, that's pretty conservative if you were to use something like that.
Yeah,
I mean, you wouldn't.
well, and you're not awarding the tenders anyway.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, and I think the concept is to try to get, I think this year we're something like 35 or so contracts, and I think the idea is to try to get the workload in that department spread broader throughout the year, so that they get, 10 or 15 tenders out the door before the end of the year.
And probably contractors would appreciate getting that early too.
Well, what's happened to us is that the first group of tenders that we put out attracted good response. Then, the second group of tenders that we put out did not attract good response, mainly because the contractors were busy. And, we had some where there was as many as 6 or 7 at the pre-site, mandatory site meeting, and only 2 of them bid. So that tells you something.
Yeah.
Tells you they're interested, but they're just too busy because in all of our tenders, we specify start and end dates. So many of them just looked at the start and end dates and said, no, we're too busy.
And just one more thing, Mr. Mayor, is that we do have a couple big unknowns, and one is that the industrial park, our first response for fire, there's kind of an open question on what the ask might be coming up from the town of Prescott. And we have the Cardinal Fire Station as well, which has a pretty, bigger range of what that cost could end up being. So, it's good. I think it's supremely important that we do plan, but that, especially this year, that we have some flexibility, because we can make a well-researched and solid and well-thought-out recommendation to the next council, and whoever they might be might have put their mind to something completely different. So we just do have those, just thinking of the industrial park and thinking of Prescott as providing, the first response there. We just know that that's a conversation that we're probably gonna have in 2018 with them about supporting
That whole idea is up for discussion. Has there been any,
No.
with the change in the CAO, we won't see anything, any discussion there at all now, until probably June or July.
I would honestly be surprised to see anything, even then.
Is that right?
Yep, I think they've got their hands full with a whole bunch of other stuff, but.
We know, but to your point, we know that is an issue, that we're waiting for them to meet with us to address it.
Right.
Okay, all right, well, I think we kind of, not gonna land on any final decisions here, good discussion. So we're gonna go to 6B, another discussion item, which is appointment of alternate to county's council. And this comes up because of a change in legislation in Bill 68. which now allows local municipalities to appoint a council member as an alternate to county council. Hasn't been allowed up until now, but the province is now indicating that we can do that. So we have the briefing note here, and we just wanted to put this up for discussion, just so that people would understand that we now have this availability. I'm assuming that the appointment, if we make it now, would be in effect for the remainder of 2018. It doesn't come into effect just in 2019, does it? Is it in effect now?
The appointment could be made now, but I know that the county clerk is also working on her procedural bylaw to ensure that any alternates that are appointed are included.
Recognized in their procedural bylaw.
Right, so North Grenville, as an example, has already passed a bylaw to appoint an alternate. I'm not sure if Mayor Gordon has been absent to know whether or not they're actually acting on that bylaw, or if it was something that was maybe not effective until January 1st of 2019.
Okay, so there has been, at this point, no discussion at the county council table, other than the fact that Bill 68 allowed it. And again, it's gonna be up to this council here to determine when they wanna make an appointment and how they want to make the appointment. So, that's open for discussion, if anybody has any comments. The briefing note refers to several places in the act. Go ahead.
Is it just not a convention in the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville that the lower tiers do not appoint someone other than the mayor? Or is it only in when the county is, the tier system is different, I guess? I don't really understand the process. I know some municipalities have a reeve and a mayor on the same council, and councilors, and the reeve serves on county council. And so I don't know that to be true anywhere in the United Counties of Leeds Grenville. And so I'm just wondering if that is, if that process is.
Yeah, if I may, Mr. Mayor, if the county of Renfrew, for
Right.
example, also elects reeves as county representatives from the lower tier, that is not the structure in Leeds and Grenville. So it's the county structure that has to be put in place to allow that sort of thing.
Okay, so
Well, let's go back a step though. Go to Renfrew again, you're talking about Renfrew County. So some of the townships elect a mayor, some elect a reeve.
Yep, and county council in Renfrew permits a reeve to be elected from a lower tier and be the county representative.
Yeah, but he's still head of that township council.
No,
we have both.
Oh, they have
they're
both.
both.
But, so if I may, so it's each municipality in that example, the county of Renfrew has a reeve on each lower tier?
Not necessarily.
Okay,
Not necessarily.
but that's part of the county council structure.
Yeah.
So, okay, so that was just kind of for my information.
So, first of all, how are these reeves elected?
At large.
At large.
Oh,
and
they are.
in the lower tier.
So
Yep.
do they kind of function as deputy mayors or deputy mayor, deputy?
No, they function as the municipality's appointment to the county council.
They're elected to be the representative at county council. Oh, I see. That's different, eh? Hmm.
So to the matter at hand, thank you for the education, Madam CAO. I think that our procedural bylaw, has it well handled, with the exception of this does not extend to membership on county's council. I think that our structure as it exists, having the deputy mayor serve as the alternate to the mayor, seems to make the most sense with our current composition.
Yeah, because there's certainly no opportunity for us to change our structure now. Okay, so,
Let's see, just, I concur with Councilor Barrett, just removing that last sentence, I think would cover it. Because, both the mayor and deputy mayor are elected at large, the other councilors are award system, so.
And a follow-up if I can, is, through you, Mr. Mayor, is the plan with procedure at county council, so for example, if a municipality had a mayor who, for whatever reason, was absent regularly, or, you know, just as a matter of practice, they decided to have their alternate attend all the time, would that be reflected in that alternate's remuneration by the county? Like, I don't know how their remuneration structure works.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, Counselor, they don't know how it's gonna work
Okay.
in this instance either. As I say, the county clerk is just drafting terms of reference and addressing those kinds of questions as to whether, how the alternates will be reimbursed or what the situation will be, so it's new to them too. So the short answer is we don't know what's going to happen, and I guess I was hoping by getting it on the agenda now, prior to the upcoming municipal election, that folks who are interested in running for deputy mayor should have an awareness that this may be something that will be added to their duties.
It may be an additional duty of the deputy mayor.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so, I think we're best served though by waiting to see how it shakes out at county council.
Yeah, which is why, as I say, there's no recommendation, it was just to get it on the table and make folks aware.
Okay. All right, so we'll regard it as a potential additional duty for deputy mayor. All right, so now I'm moving to item 7 on the agenda, and the first item is 7A, the Spencerville Legion Beer Garden request. And I think there's a recommendation there, Councillor Barrett.
I'd like to move the recommendation.
You have a second?
I'll second it. It's very good.
That's okay.
Okay, I'll take
You go.
Mr. Robertson.
This is an annual thing for them anyway.
Yeah. And just so for the folks here, the committee recommends that council support the events of the Spencerville Legion, specifically their request to host 2 outdoor beer gardens on the following dates in 2018. August 18th, ball banquet, and September 22, Legion Week event. And if I'm not missing, didn't we approve 3 last year?
There were actually 4 last year.
Included Canada Day,
Mm-hmm.
Canada Day as well.
Canada Day and I think the fair, they had one.
So those are missing from this request.
Maybe-
Did we have any talk with Linda Fowler, the secretary, to see what happened here?
Another member, not Linda, not Mrs. Fowler directly, but we did speak with another member to make sure that this was correct. I don't know if they're struggling with volunteers and maybe having,
They can always come at a later time and ask.
as long as they're within the time period.
All right.
Okay, so we'll deal with the recommendation that's on the table then. Further questions, if any? Hearing none, those in favor? Okay, so that's carried. And then 7B, appointment of alternate building inspectors. And again, we have a recommendation. This time I'll take Mr. Robertson and Councillor Barrett. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Nope, I'm good, I'm just seconding the recommendation.
We've had experience with Dave Marcel. I don't know the other 2 people, so I can't speak to it.
Okay, so this recommendation is a recommendation that council adopt a bylaw to appoint Karen Levine and Ray Sissons as building inspectors for the Township of Edwardsburg-Cardinal to act in the absence of Randy Hopkins. And Marcel is already on the list, is that correct? Okay, those in favor of the recommendation? Recommendation is carried. Which one, by the way, is from Augusta?
Karen Levine.
Okay. And 7C, parking bylaw review and set fines. So this is quite a review, bringing our parking bylaw sort of up to date after many years, eh? Let me just have a look here. What was the date of the original one? How far back did it go?
2004.
2004. Okay, so everybody's had a chance to look at it. Any comments?
Question.
Go ahead.
Do we have a bicycle path anywhere in the township?
County Road 2.
We have
That's county
shoulders
road.
on roads that are sort of earmarked, but I suppose it's to be looking at the future. We may get one. you know.
All right, I thought I was missing something.
Anything else? I've got a couple of things to raise. On the top of well, okay, the top of the page says section 3, stopping and parking regulations. Where there is a raised or rolled curb, all persons stopping or parking a vehicle on a roadway will do so in a manner that situates the vehicle as close and as parallel to the right-hand curb as possible. This provision as it relates to parallel does not apply to a street or roadway having a downgrade or upgrade and a raised or, which I think that word should be rolled curb. So in other words, what you're saying here is that if there's an upgrade or a downgrade, will allow you to be a little bit less than parallel. Is that what this is saying?
Yeah.
Okay. And the last question that I have, is actually I got two more. And that's the section 6 on winter parking and cleaning. And so in number 2, clause 2 of that section, we say no person shall park or permit to be parked, any motor vehicle, during the consecutive months of November, December, January, February, March, 15th of April, between the hours of 1 a.m. and 7 a.m. So that makes that very clear. Now, I don't understand the purpose of number 4, because they're not supposed to be there anyway, 1 a.m. to 7 a.m.
It would cover us if there would happen to be a winter event in October or after the 15th.
Okay, so that's the purpose of that one. I see, okay, I got you. But I'm wondering, is that 1 a.m. to 7 a.m. sufficient for clearing operations? Do our clearing operations not ever extend beyond 7 a.m.? Should we not give the operations people a little bit, another hour or so to work with?
These are the hours that were in the previous bylaw, but I'll let the Director of Operations speak to whether or not we need to change.
Through the chair, certainly increasing an hour or two would be potentially a benefit for operations, but however, we're anticipating that once you start into that 6:30 time frame and moving forward, that everybody's heading to work, and we'll be stopping in those downtown core areas where we'd be focused on. So
Okay, so,
I think in that particular sense that it's adequate as presented between 1 a.m. and 7 a.m.
okay, you
to
think
get that downtown core area.
All right, now then to the set fine schedule. Do you think that these numbers, basically $30 all the way through, do you think that they're sufficient to be deterrent? Pretty cheap parking.
It was a best practice review. I mean, we took a look at what other folks in the neighborhood are charging for their parking infractions, and this seems to be pretty common. And I'm just laughing because we issue so few tickets, but it's not a great source of revenue for us.
No, that's for sure. I just don't know whether it's a deterrent. These all go to provincial offenses court. They're collected through provincial offenses in Brockville.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, I guess if there was a meter and it was gonna cost you $2 to park and you didn't pay that, you might have that set fine a little higher, but when it's free to park everywhere.
Well, if they're not hearing anything, I just thought they were a little on the light side, that's all.
I think the only one that I would heavily want to deter is to deter is the snow, the winter snow removal. And, I mean, $100 for something like that, might make people find a place to park the car other than the street during the winter time. And that's one of the bigger problems, I think, is that people don't feel they really need to get off the main drag when there's a big snowstorm.
So
Because the plows will go around them anyway.
That's 31, eh? Parked vehicle between the hours of 1 and 7 from November to April 15th. It's presently the set fine, if you do it, and you get ticketed, the fine is $50. What's the feeling, or I need some,
I didn't see anything in here about towing. At some point, do you entertain towing a car that's in the road?
I think it only says for blocking a fire ring. It's the only time that it talks about a fire accident.
Section 8 covers the removal of an illegally parked vehicle.
Oh,
Section 8? Well, it gives us pretty broad powers to tow.
That is correct.
And then the owner of the vehicle is responsible for the towing cost plus the storage cost. Have we made, this is an operational issue, I guess it wouldn't be addressed in the bylaw, but have we made arrangements for where we would tow the vehicles to? They have to be secured.
Yeah, the tow truck operators have their own impound yard.
Oh, they do?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Trust me.
Is the practice in the city, I can't remember, I've had my vehicle moved in the city during a winter snow event, you go to find it and it's gone, but it's 2 blocks away, they deposit them. Do they charge you for that? Like, there's not an impound fee, I mean, that there's a row of cars parked on A Street and there's temporary snow removal signs, do not park here, and then everyone comes out of the event, and all the cars are gone, and you walk a block away, and everyone's cars are lined up in the same order on the next street. But I don't feel like there's an impound, like, they're not taking you to an impound, but do they just levy the fine, the parking fine?
And likely the towing fee. I would
And the
think.
towing fee?
Yeah, the impound is a different thing entirely. but
Right.
yeah.
Okay.
Did you not have to pay a towing fee?
I feel like I didn't have to pay a towing fee. And that when I went to pay my ticket, they waived it because I was the only one who went to pay their ticket.
Oh,
So, people don't pay these tickets.
Too honest.
So that's why I can't recall the it didn't really, there was no, I drove to Center Point to pay the ticket and there was no parking ticket.
isn't that interesting? So they didn't take it to a compound, they took everybody's car just
Around the
to a
block.
different location.
Yeah.
And you could access your cars?
Yes.
They didn't have a, what's it called,
boot.
a Las Vegas boot?
No, I didn't get booted.
No?
Numbers 26 and 27 on the fine. It's not applicable for voluntary payment within 10 days, but there's a set fine after 7 of 300. That's not making any sense to me.
I'll let the deputy clerk speak to that one. Not sure why it's like that.
For the designated permit parking for accessibility, actually we, according to bylaw 2005, that was the judge's order. And basically, every municipality in Leeds and Grenville that issues set fines do not have a early fee for the $300, because it is a very serious offense.
Oh, I see,
So
so you don't
should-
get a break.
No,
It's
no
not a
break.
discount.
Okay, so we should not say 300 in both columns?
No, it just means there's no early fine, there's no discount, so it's not applicable.
So what is so it's $300,
Period.
period?
Okay, yeah.
Oh, okay, all right, I was reading. Yeah, okay.
All right, so I'm not getting any,
Nobody wants to increase the 31?
nobody wants to increase any of the others, so I guess that we're gonna let this one go the way it is.
I just feel like it's such a pain for you guys when you're trying to plow. I know it.
Okay, so we have a recommendation in front of us, looking for a mover and a seconder.
I'll move it.
Okay, and second. And if there's no further discussion, I'm gonna call the question. Those in favor? Okay, it's carried. And number D, 7D, use of corporate resources policy. So the briefing note is here. Use of corporate resources for election purposes policy. Don't use corporate resources. All right, so there's a recommendation here.
I'll move that committee recommend that council adopts a bylaw to establish a use of corporate resources policy.
Seconder. Mayor Taylor. Further discussion, if any?
To me, it just seems like another policy that's, do we really need this? Is this yeah, it's been
Well-
happening in the past?
According to the Municipal Elections Act, we do now need this.
We do now need this?
And I'll be honest with you, the deputy clerk and I were somewhat resistant. We were thinking it was a best practice as opposed to a
Yeah.
requirement, but we've recently found out that it is a requirement. We must have it.
Okay.
Must have this
Because I saw
policy
it
in
as a
place.
best practice thing this summer.
Okay, and I guess my question with it is the following one. And it's on section 3, general provisions, item C, so in other words, 3C. Municipal facilities / property may not be used for any campaign-related purposes, which includes but not limited to displaying any campaign-related signs or materials on such premises. Now, I can understand you can't put your sign in here, but what about the side of the road, which is also township property? So I was discussing that with the CAO today and the deputy clerk as well. Does this mean we can't put our signs on the road township rights of way, which is township property? And if you do, I'm gonna go and tell Steve Clark right away.
Municipal Elections Act, so first of all, don't have any jurisdiction over the other orders. But the policy as it stands is silent. Most municipalities where they address roadside signage also have a sign bylaw in place that will then go on to talk about size, number, how long they can be there, all that sort of thing. We quite frankly don't have enforcement for that, so we were sort of deliberately silent on it in this policy, but it was not our intent to prevent roadside signage.
You also
So-
run into things like the rink and Sierra, and parks, people put them along in parks or on the,
Yeah,
and see that too, like,
under this proposed policy, that would not be.
you couldn't be able to do it.
And we would just go and remove them quietly. I don't see having our roads crews out there removing signs.
Or ticketing us.
No, there's no set fines, you're good.
Oh, no, that's true, yeah. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, Mr. Mayor, so it's the totality of the election rules are the discretion of the clerk during the election period. And so the enforcement would be for campaign signs, in front of, the main doors to a public building, the arena, or the municipal offices here, the fire station, but not on the rights of way.
That's the impression that I get. Okay, so we have a recommendation in front of us. Further discussion, if any? Hearing none. Those in favor? Okay, it's carried. Recommendation is carried. All right, so now we're at council inquiries or notices of motion. Do they have any notices of motion or inquiries tonight? Hearing none. Going on to item number 9, which is the mayor's report. I have a number of things to report on here. So first, the bad news. So, I'm gonna talk just for a minute about the Grenville Mutual Insurance Building. And as I reported earlier on a number of meetings ago, there is an offer on the building, and the offer has been accepted. So offer plus acceptance, there's a contract in place. Now that contract required that the deal would close on April the 30th. The deal did not close on April the 30th. It was extended to May the 7th, Monday, past Monday. it did not close on May the 7th either. And it was not extended, but as of today at 5 o'clock, the deal still has not been closed. So we have a situation where we have a contract in place, but one of the signatories to the contract is refusing to close the deal. It's called Specific Performance, refusing to close. So the treasurer has been working with the bank, and I've been working with the buyer to try to determine what can be done here. The township's interest, of course, is taxation. That's their limit of the township's interest. The mayor's interest is economic development. That's why I'm spending so much time with the buyer. But suffice it to say that until something changes, we really don't have a closure on a deal. And it goes back to the old saying, I'm sure you've heard it before, deal isn't a deal until the deal is done. And this one ain't done. Okay, going on to the second item, I'm told that North Channel Supply has filed their application for a building permit, and I understand that that process is well underway. Next item, I've been working with a chap named Eric Connell, who's in charge of the Spencerville Fair Ambassadors Program. And he would like to bring the Spencerville Fair Ambassadors to a pre-council little get-together on before the council meeting on Monday, May the 28th. So he'll be here with his 4 little ambassadors, and we'll have a little presentation to make to each of them, and I think he's working with them to have them make a little presentation to the audience, and I know a number of their parents want to come as well, so we'll do that at 6 and present them with their little, whatever we give them, and have a little coffee and thing, donuts with the parents and the kids. Item number 4 concerns the 730 truck stop bankruptcy. So on May the 1st, I attended the bankruptcy meetings in Ottawa with the township lawyer. As you know, we appointed a bankruptcy lawyer to walk us through that proceedings. There are actually 4 companies, all of which have been placed in receivership, 2 of which have been petitioned into bankruptcy. And that process is ongoing. The property is now listed for sale, a commercial real estate agent, and the receiver is hoping to get some sale here in the next short period of time, but until the receiver can effect a sale, there appears to be no other assets. And at this point in time, the insurance company is still not paying. Our bankruptcy lawyer and our staff want to thank them for the work they're doing, because they're working very hard with the receiver to try to make the good argument to the insurance company that our costs as it pertain to fire cleanup should at least be paid by the insurance company. We'd like to get that separated from the bankruptcy proceeds, and get that money from the insurance company. We're hoping that we'll get some word on that. Maybe staff has an update. Is there any word on that?
I haven't
No.
heard anything.
Okay, next item, county council meeting on Tuesday, joint services on Wednesday, and the main issue coming out of the county council meeting was the report of the Highway Operations Safety Review Group. And I'm gonna leave a copy of the report with the clerk and the deputy clerk so that everybody can have a look at it. But the Highway Operations Safety Review Group was established about 7 months ago as a result of that accident that occurred near Mallorytown, where the poor driver was killed because of the dangerous goods that he was transporting. And there's been a great hue and cry since. The highway's been closed several times since. And this group has been meeting, well, it took a while to get them going, but they've been meeting quite frequently. And this is their final report, which went to the minister. And of course, it was only in the minister's hands for a few days until the election was called. So there's not going to be much happen now until there's another minister in place. But just to highlight a number of things. There were 4 working group meetings to share information related to the transportation of dangerous goods. The ministry has erected 30 of those portable variable message signs that you see along the highway. Those are 30 in the eastern region, which is Kathleen Moore's region, and they're programmable from the center in Ottawa. There's been 2 new road weather information systems installments made in conjunction with those signs so that they have real-time weather associated with the signs. There's been 10 radar speed sensors installed onto existing road weather information system stations. So they're now sensing speeds. There's been 6 additional roadside cameras installed along the 401 this winter, and they're available. The information is available on Ontario 511 if you plan your trip ahead of time. There was 4 province-wide enforcement initiatives between November of 17 and March of 18 targeting commercial motor vehicles carrying dangerous goods for inspection. Now, in addition to those initiatives, the group established what's called the Quick Clearance Committee to identify strategies to minimize clearance times in response to highway closures. They want to see if there's some way they can get the highway opened quicker. So there's a committee working on that. They've initiated a review of the guidelines and best practices for emergency detour routes. Now, we had emergency detour routes activated just 2 weekends ago, and I'm going to be asking the CAO to arrange a meeting with the inspector. We just plain have to have better traffic control when 401 is closed in both directions. And just coming north, I don't know if you came up 416 tonight.
Terrible.
Highway 401 westbound is solid again, and line of transport extends back towards Cardigan, just barely moving. All that heavy evening traffic trying to funnel into one lane, and Monday to Thursday it just shuts right down. But at least we have one lane open. They've initiated a review of the guidelines and best practices for the emergency detour routes. I said that. They've initiated a review of the timelines for first responders, highway closures, and highway repair, to see if they can get that moving a little bit faster. And then the most important one, in my opinion, they've initiated a study of options related to variable speed limit solutions. One of the things that the county council representatives on this group were really active about was that we slow the speeds down when we have these adverse weather events. The problem is that there's no legislative or regulatory enableization that will enable the ministry to slow speeds. So that's a major initiative. And that's one of the reasons that they put up these 30 variable message signs. If they can get the legislation and the regulations changed in such a way that they have the power to reduce the limit from 100 to 60, I think that that's the direction that they will move. Other mayors are trying to get the dangerous goods, the trucks carrying dangerous goods, into the truck stops. In Pennsylvania, they closed the highway to trucking completely, and the trucks are in the truck stops. But they're telling us that there's not enough room in the truck stops, all of them, to accommodate the volume of trucks that are on these highways. You had a question?
Just a comment, Mr. Mayor. as you've observed in your travels to Brockville, I'm sure for your meetings, they're paving shoulders on both sides, but can't give us 3 lanes in Eastern Ontario. So they're doing this massive paving project, but can't give us 3 lanes. But they've got the space, they've got the asphalt, and they're already disrupting the traffic, but they won't do it. And they're investing all this money in these signs and studies, and they're hiring 175 new labor inspectors to make sure everyone's getting paid minimum wage. But I could just imagine if we had 100 of those 175 actually enforcing the trucking standards, so that the majority of truckers who are doing a great job operating their rigs safely could continue to do so and get home to their family, and the ones who are operating unsafely could be off the roads and be banned from driving a truck, and save the lives of people like the trucker who died, a week ago.
This
And
week ago, yeah.
It just seems like such half measures, and, there's not enough room in the truck stops, but we know that they've got closed, the closed-on routes that they had before. Like the tourism one that they have on the east of here, towards Cornwall. They have closed pull-off stations there. There's closed ones west of us, and it wouldn't take a great sum of effort by the province to pave some areas where they could either do truck inspections or pull trucks off in bad weather. It just seems like they want to study it to death because they've never seen it from Toronto. But I think they should just come down and look at a paved shoulder. Doesn't do what we needed to do in Eastern Ontario.
Well, and the whole point of paving the shoulders, as we learned from the ladies that made our presentation to us a week or so ago, was just so that they could do maintenance on the 2 existing lanes. And they're putting us off on these paved shoulders so that they can take up the concrete on the 2 travel lanes. When they finish doing the maintenance work on the 2 travel lanes, I can't understand why the 3rd lane isn't open, but there's no plan to open it. But I must admit that is a shoulder. It's got a slope of a shoulder. It is not engineered as a driving lane. I can't argue with you, but clearly the regional director makes it very clear that there has been no engineering done for 3rd lanes, and 3rd lanes would be minimum of 5 years out. So anyway, that's my little report on that one. I attended on Friday, the 2018 Thousand Islands and Rideau Canal Garden Trail launch. Was held at the Thousand Islands Village in Maitland. And, I meant to bring copies of the little brochure, but just a couple of things from the launch. There were 1,700 people that visited the gardens last year, the 14 gardens that were on the garden trail. 35 tour buses with people from all over the world were in those gardens. And we have 2 of those gardens here in Edwardsburg Cardinal. One is the Healing Circle Labyrinth in Johnstown, and the other is Macau Gardens here in Spencerville. So I just point them out, they're great spots if anybody hasn't already visited them. I attended as well on Friday the Children's Water Festival. Dave, your group did an excellent job again. You had a good crowd of kids out.
Yep.
And there's happy.
631 kids.
630.
2 days, yeah.
Yeah, and the lady from the TD Bank, one of the sponsors, was here. And the port was also a big sponsor.
Yes. I sent an email to Deb this afternoon, and maybe she can pass it on to you. I know you asked for the information, so.
And the last thing, I'll just kind of, if you want to put it in your calendars, the Grenville Community Futures Development Corporation Annual General Meeting will be held at 8 o'clock on the morning of Friday, June the 22nd at the Spencerville Mill this year. So have it in our township. So that's the mayor's report, and I'm moving on then to the question period. Are there any questions?
I have a few parking related questions, if I may, Mr. Mayor. CAO had indicated that you don't give out a lot of parking tickets. Can you give me a rough idea how many you would issue in a year?
To staff?
Ballpark?
Very few. I would say probably none this past winter. My memory's not good, maybe was, but I would say it was none over the course of this winter.
Which would kill my second question, what the most common infraction would be. Last question, speaking to Councillor Barrett's story about Ottawa, how enforceable are these parking tickets? If I get one and I just rip it out and say, screw it, I'm not paying this, what's the repercussions?
If I may, Mr. Mayor, through the chair, because it's through provincial offences court, they're now connected to your driver's license. So if you don't pay your tickets, you don't get your license renewed.
But the ticket actually comes from the township.
That's correct, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, it goes to the provincial offences court in Brockville. It is definitely tied to your driver's license.
So last question, with this new and improved policy, do you see a rise of parking tickets being handed out?
Honestly, not
I
likely.
think I'm on the grass a little bit.
If I may, again, through you, Mr. Chair, we likely won't see a big increase in the number of tickets handed out, but it certainly gives us a bit more flexibility with respect to who can order the removal of a vehicle in a winter event, and I think that's really where we'll see maybe a little more action than we have in the past. We don't, as you know, we have a contract by law enforcement officer who doesn't have regular hours, and you know, at the moment, if he's not available, we have a hard time issuing tickets, but this bylaw allows a number of other folks to issue tickets and also arrange for towing where needed.
I guess the other thing that I'd like to add to that is that at the beginning of the season, we do issue at least once and sometimes twice warning notices. We put warning notices on windshields of cars. The main problem is Cardinal, I think, and maybe to some extent Spencerville. But we put warning notices on the windshields, and to a large extent they have worked, although I have seen, even after the warnings were issued, I have seen 2 and 3 cars that still park overnight. They're just lucky that they don't get tickets because of the situation that the CAO mentioned, where the bylaw officer doesn't work 5 days a week, 7 hours a day. Any additional questions? Hearing none. Okay, the next item on the agenda is a closed session, and we do have a closed session today. And I'm looking for a motion to go into the closed session.
I'll move that committee of the whole proceeds into closed session at 7:38 PM in order to address a matter pertaining to a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land for municipal or local board purposes, specifically industrial land, and litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, specifically minutes of closed session dated April 9, 2018.
Looking for a seconder. Deputy Mayor Taylor is seconding. Motion is on the table. Discussion of any? Hearing none, those in favor? Motion is carried.
Yep, moved by myself, second by Deputy Mayor Taylor. The closed meeting does now adjourn, and the open meeting of committee of the whole does now resume at 8:10 PM.
Okay, those in favor? Motion is carried, so we're back in the open session. So, reporting out from closed session, I need a mover to approve the minutes of the closed session.
Moved by myself, seconded by Dave Robertson. The committee of the whole approves the minutes of the closed session of April 9th, 2018.
Those in favor? Motion is carried. And then further reporting out from closed session, the committee met with the CAO and staff to discuss the potential acquisition of industrial land and provided guidance and suggestions. And can I have a motion to adjourn then, please? Who's got the motion to adjourn?
The committee of the whole does now adjourn at 8:10 PM,
Make it 8:12.
8:12 for me. I'll clean my glasses.
Everything's squeezed on the bottom.
Those in favor? Motion is carried, thank you.